I'm about to share a Necromancer build for you. The pros of this build are fast PvE farming, things like the overworld experience farming, dungeon farming, anything where you're looking for a speed clearing type of ratio, basically. You're not trying to be super tanky. You're not trying to keep your teammates alive. You're not trying to be supportive. You're just trying to wipe out monsters as quickly as you can in large groups. That's essentially the purpose of this build. It will work for dungeons, overworld farming, basically any PvE. I would not really recommend it in particular for things like Heliquary Warband or Challenge Rift pushing. This is for farming quickly and efficiently, okay? This is what I use probably 90% of my time, because in this game, in-game, as most of you already know, and I don't have to tell you who have been playing a while, this game is mostly grinding at the end game. So that is what this build is optimized for. I'm going to go over first the legendary items, as they're the most important. I'll go over the items for the set, as they are the second most important. I will go over the legendary gems last, as I really don't think they matter. But the one I will mention very quickly here is Seeping Bile will go a long way to make this build better. The other gems, not really is a big deal, maybe Bottled Hope, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Okay, let's get going with this. If you are a Necromancer, consider liking the channel to help out a fellow Necromancer. Subscribe if you want to, and let's get going. I'm going to show you in the Essence Transfer, so that way I can show you all the different ones and give you a backup piece in case you don't have the first one I mentioned. Command Golem here, duration is 30%. This is basically very important because what it's going to do is allow your Molten Golem to be up most of the time, and Molten Golem's a big part of this build. It's some of the only burst damage you really have available in this build in particular, and it will also allow for continual damage, because if we have this paired with, we also have the shield that when it dies, will split into two smaller golems when it dies. You have a golem that lasts like a pretty long time, so you basically always got a golem going on, okay? You can also do the Command Golem damage increase from the shield instead if you want, and a secondary option for the helmet is you can go the Skeletal Mage duration if you would like. Really, the helmet's the least important one out of all of these, but I do recommend the Command Golem duration or the Mage duration. Moving on to shoulders, because we're going to be using the Mage in particular, and I'll show you the abilities and why we're going to be using them. We're going to either use Skeletal Mage Shoulders, or we're going to be using the Skeletal Mage Maximum Charge. I prefer the Maximum Charge, because when you use the Maximum Charge one, because there's two stacks now instead of one stack of the Mage, when you use one of the Mage, it automatically starts the cooldown to be able to stack, to restack the ammunition of your counts. And basically it makes the cooldown better, because otherwise, if you had the Mage available and you didn't have the bonus stack, it would only start the cooldown when you cast them. But now, because you have two, you basically always have one on cooldown. So as long as you kind of keep one always out, you're always going to have a mage available, basically. And it helps out a lot with the farming. I'll show you an example of the farming later so you can get a better idea of this. So you can either go with that one or the Skeletal Mage damage. Basically anything that's just going to help out the abilities you're going to be using. You can also use the Bone Armor, Grave Dirt's Weight, as well as a third tier one if you don't have the other options, because it will help, because you will be using Bone Armor. We'll talk about in a moment. Now, the Bone Armor here is because the chest plate we're going to be using is Flickering Warmth, where the Bone Armor instead summons 3 bone spikes that orbit around you. We're going to be doing this because it's part of how this farming build is going to be put together when I show it to you at the end. It's going to allow us one other way of burst by actually, when we're inside of a pack of mobs, then using the ability which will have the bone spikes comes outwards, which gives you a little bit of guaranteed damage as well. And then also it's how we continually run around in a circle and always do damage without stopping. So Flickering Warmth is actually quite important, and also trigger Bottled Hope if we are going to have Bottled Hope as well. Now, if you don't have this one, you can use Covet Nothing, and that is one other way of continually dealing damage. It also triggers Bottled Hope, because it does in fact shield you, but it will increase the damage on the enemies. I don't like this near as much as Flickering Warmth. The whole point of Flickering Warmth is that it continues the bone spikes around you for a while. The whole point of this build is that you always have some damage happening. You're like a tornado, just constantly generating DPS around you, and that's how you're farming quickly, is by generating that constant DPS. And the other ones aren't really in that same vein. Parting Gifts is pretty good in like other PvE modes, and there's other great ones, but not in what we're trying to accomplish today, which is farming quickly. So there's not really a lot of other great options for me to tell you. It really comes down to Flickering Warmth. I think is quite top tier here. Now, I actually use Proximal Fear, which might seem a little weird because this is a PvP item, but I have Chip of Stone Flesh, so it triggers off of the Proximal Fear. So I can trigger my legendary gem there. If you don't have that legendary gem, you can, in fact, instead of that one, going with the Bone Armor. But there's another reason, also because it does damage. You can use your Wraith mode to go through the people while you're farming, and your bone armor from Flickering Warmth still happens too, like it still actively goes around you. So you can go through the people while damaging them, going through them. Their CC kind of running, they normally kind of like spread out. If you're running through like a group of them, they'll kind of spread out in fear from you, right? And then your Flickering Warmth that's rotating around you would typically do damage too. You can jump on your Molten Golem and all that on them. To be honest, it works really nice because the Wraith also triggers Bottle of Hope for me, talking about gems again. So I think the pants are maybe the one that's reliant most upon my legendary gems, but I don't think it matters. I think because of the way you're going to be using this as a movement ability, plus the bonus damage itself. Like the damage can actually hit really hard when it criticals. Like it's not a small hitting move. It hits at a minimum at least like a basic attack. So you might be thinking like, okay, well, it's just like a small percentage damage, like the Exuminant Backbone where you knock somebody up or something. But no, it's actually a pretty decent little chunk. So I just really like having that fear in my kit personally. I really like Wraith quite a lot. There's not really any option here. It's Desolatoria. It's not even close. The Command Golem being the Molten Golem is just significantly the best one here. There's something to be said for the effigy that can be left behind with Wraith form, but it's just significantly worse because a large part of this build is based around Molten Golem. If you don't have the Molten Golem, your damage is just going to go down significantly, so not a huge way around that. And then like I've already said, you can do both of the ones that talk about the Golem. I really would not recommend the Skeletal Mage with Grim Reaper. Grim Reaper hits really hard and is way stronger than normal Mage, but he has a leashing issue where when he's active, if you get far enough away from him, he'll teleport to you, which means you're going to leave stragglers behind you while you're farming in a loop, which again, I'll show you in a minute. And because of that, you're going to have less kills because when you come back around the circle, there'll be a straggler and that previous pack hasn't spawned if you're farming the overworld. So this can actually really fight against you when you're trying to optimize your DPS. Set items, there's really two ways to go. You can do the continual damage builds like this one here that's going to do continual damage and channel damage. That is because this will be triggered off of any damage over time dot type of situations, and we do have that. However, I don't recommend this one personally. I much prefer to go the summons type of build with the Shepherd's Call. Just max out your summons because you're going to have the Golem and you're going to have the mages up. And if you have the stacking one, you're going to have two mages up a good amount of time. So you'll get crit rate for that, but you'll get, more importantly, you're going to get damage for both your mage and your Golem, which is a good chunk of your damage, about half your damage. And then this build will also be better for other builds later. Like you're going to be using a very full summon build later in the game for more single target type DPS. So if you min-max your PvE farming build, it's also going to help like later on in the game for your more single target PvE types of builds. And then you can worry about PvP builds later with the duration loss of control and stuff when you go to min-maxing the game later. Whereas this build will allow you to have multiple PvE. We'll cover the skills and the legendary gems briefly. The skills are the ones you're seeing here. The Wraith form because of the Proximal Fear, Command Golem because of Desolatoria, Bone Armor because of Flickering Warmth, and your Skeletal Mage. If you don't have the Bone Armor or Proximal Fear or something like that, you can replace one or the other with a Gilded Leash like the Whirlwind Command Skeleton. For instance, here could go in either one of these. Legendary gems, like I said, not required for this build. It's not part of it, but if you want to know the ones that I think interact best, Chip of the Stone Flesh interacts good with Proximal Fears. Winston's Haunting is great just for farming. Seeping Bow is the best gem you can have on Necromancer, and Bottled Hope interacts with almost all of your abilities that grant buffs, like your Bone Armor, your Proximal Fear that gives you a Banshee. These all count for Bottled Hope too. So these are all great abilities. Again, not required, but they do actually help out with the build. Okay, here's what the build actually looks like fully realized. So you go to an area of the farm. For instance, I'm in the Realm of Damnation, common spot. You're in the middle of a group. You find a pack here. You use your Bone Armor to go around a circle and constantly tag things like this and pick them up. You put your Molten Golem there on them to finish up the group. Any stragglers, you leave a Skeletal Mage behind to clear up the ones with a little bit of HP. You continue running in a circle. You invite all the people you can into your party. Anything that you don't kill that's behind you while you're farming your party, your Molten Golem or your mages will kill. You continually use the combination of Bone Armor plus Wraith to front load damage the second you get onto groups. Like you have continual damage always because you Wraith into them, you summon the Golem on them, your Bone Armor's up most of the time anyway, and if you don't have the Proximal Fear pants, instead you have the Bone Armor pants, it pretty much is up all the time. Then anytime you have a discrepancy of like I didn't finish off all the minions or anything like that, you just use your Mage stacks, to go ahead and take care of the enemies that you were the stragglers left behind. And the great thing about it is this also works super well in a party. Because it constantly tags things all around and you're moving constantly, you tend to like group up things behind you, which makes it easier for your group to actually kill things. And your damage happens all consistently while you're moving. Like you're not stuck at all, just having to like stand in a place and kill a pack. The only time that's difficult is like what just happened right here, where you can see there's an elite mob behind. So when you get in these situations like this, where it's like, oh, there's an elite pack, you gotta have your mages. You drop your mages for that, and you let the mages kill them, or then you do have to wait for like the yellows or the oranges, if you're solo especially. Otherwise, in the party, you never have to wait for anything. You just constantly do a circle, and you're pretty much always good to go. This is my personal opinion. The fastest farming you can do on a Necromancer, in my own personal opinion, my favorite build, one of the most fun builds, and it's probably what you're going to spend the majority of your time doing as a Necromancer, is going to be farming like this. And this is, in my personal opinion, so far from what I've seen, the quickest way to do it. I hope this video helped and you at least learned a little bit about something in this video. If you did, consider liking the video to complete our trade of information for, YouTuber narcissism. Have a great day, and yeah, thanks for watching.